bursts.
Yeah,
Like
it's all based on trust.
But this bubble,
the whole
credit
thing
bubble,
is based on trust.
Yeah.
But
Trust in the future economy will be better than today's economy.
But
which everybody, I feel like for the most part, everybody has. You know what I mean? Like, unless you have like a pessimistic view on the future, like more people than not have a view that like,
but you also
tomorrow
need real,
will be better than today.
No. But the problem is you don't need just trust. You need real growth, because without real growth, you just keep going further and further into debt like we're doing. And we haven't had real economic growth in the form of like actual, we haven't since essentially like the 1970s has been an inflated version of growth, and certain things have gotten more expensive. We had cheaper versions of goods, but we haven't had real economic growth from invention and like inventions of industry. We've had increases in productivity, but that's resulted in firing and losing jobs, and then that results in lower economic growth because there's less labor and things like that. But like by doing this, like what he's talking about, the printing money over the last decades, we have the trust still, but that's so fragile, and we're just making the problem bigger and bigger and bigger and hoping that we will get this level of growth back to bring the problem down. But if we get to a point where this gets so big and we lose that trust, then like the whole thing
if we haven't had, like, what is that level of growth then? We haven't had it already then.
No, like the internet and the .com bubble.
Yeah, like the 1970s, 50, you're saying 50, we haven't grown in 50 years?
Yeah, there is a website. What?
Yeah, but you have to understand this ties into the whole consumerism thing, and that.
Yeah, no, we haven't had real
consumerism.
Like, what's real economic growth if it hasn't been in 50 years?
I don't think Shane is right here. I don't know where that.
In 50, I feel like a lot has happened in 50.
No, we've had, all right, yes, we've been growing. Of course, we've been growing small amounts, but not extreme increases in.
Bro, the internet hasn't been around for 50 years.
Dude,
yes, the internet hasn't brought massive new forms of labor and prosperity to people. Have you seen the wealth distribution and the wealth inequality? That's not.
Yeah, but like, what does
a
that
symptom
have to
of a growing
do
economy?
With, like,
my company exists because
what do you mean? How does it have to do with a
growing
growing economy?
Google,
Inequality.
Amazon.
Yes.
What are you talking?
I think inequality is not dependent on like the average person.
No, look at wages. Wait,
why?
And then look at
the total. All right, but look at the
because
salary in circulation.
Think about,
is that not greater than 50 years ago?
Yeah, no shit, because of inflation.
All right, well, times 50 years by 0.3%. Are you telling me it's not greater than that?
No way, Shane. What the fuck are you talking about now? There's no way that you're saying that there hasn't been significant economic growth and addition to the world GDP in 50 years.
There is a website, whatthefuckhappened in1971.com. Literally, read it and look at the graph. Okay, growth in productivity and hourly compensation since 1948.
So we can all see it.
What the fuck happened in 1971.com? That's the reputable source we're using right now.
Okay, well, it's using actual sources from the Economic Policy Institute. Like, what do you? Someone's not able to make a website.
Dude,
am I not sharing the right screen? Can you guys see this?
You are.
Yeah, but this is not going to the same point that he's making, dude.
Look at productivity and look at compensation. Look, the point. Yes, no. This is the point that I'm making to you.
So
is
productivity
that the fact
has increased.
Okay. Real median weekly earnings of full-time workers. Look at the flat line. That's of actual people in the US and what people are earning. So that's the point, is that there's been just a massive transfer of wealth there's been a growth in GDP, but it hasn't been going to the actual people, is what I'm saying. So there's been growth in GDP that's been going to corporations and the top 1%. That's why wealth inequality is so absurd right now. And there's no real middle class.
Okay, but you're not saying that you're not saying that there hasn't been growth. You're just saying there hasn't been equal growth amongst.
I'm saying that there hasn't been a real level of economic growth. Because look, this
why is that not real economic growth?
Why is that not
real? Because actual people haven't been earning more. It haven't been increasing their amount of wealth. Like compared to these levels, look at real median weekly earnings of full-time workers.
That one metric.
in the real, why does what one person makes compare to what IBM makes? When IBM spends like $3 billion a year and one person spends $20,000 a year.
Well, Shane,
Like, how are you
Look
going to
at
compare apples to
No,
apples?
Shane,
can you
when you're
look at
talking
can
about
you look at the
billion-dollar
any
companies?
of these charts
All right, real GDP per capita and
and median male
income.
income? This is median male income.
Okay, and what's the
Shane,
top line?
No, but Shane,
This is real GDP
okay.
per
So
capita.
what is that? What does that mean?
What I'm saying
What is
what
real
I'm
GDP
saying
per
is
capita?
that people
I don't know what that
middle
means. What that means? Tell me what that means.
real GDP per capita. So
Yeah,
that's
yeah.
real gross domestic product per capita. So based on per your like
So the
specific
United States exports $100 million. Let's just say, for example, sake of goods, we produce $100 million, and there's 100 million people. That's $1 per capita, basically what you're saying.
Yes.
yes.
Per person,
So what I'm
excluding corporations.
But let's look at
No.
percent in terms of percent.
This
right?
is the nation's income, gross domestic product of the US. And this
Okay.
is the median male income. So this is the actual middle, the absolute, this isn't average because average would take into account the outliers that are making a billion. This isn't about those people. It's the median. So this is the actual middle of the road American. And that's what I'm saying is that there hasn't been a real growth in the American people. And like this is what it actually reflects. Is this
No,
like
that's not the argument. Again, it's just not the argument that's made in the book, dude. Like,
well, no, I'm not.
Your argument. I
Not
understand,
even about the book.
dude. We're talking in terms of like what the arguments that he has made, especially in terms of consumerism, is just talking about growth on a GDP front. That as long as there is growth in what is produced and what exists in the world, that the credit cycle will continue. We're not
What
talking
I'm saying,
about
no,
earnings of an
I know, but what I'm saying to you is that sure, but if this growth in actual GDP and there's more money out into the world and we're going further and further into debt as we are, and there's not an actual earning of growth amongst the American people, like this very clearly shows you the median household income in New York and Boston versus the increase in cost of living in those places. This is a reflection of we're making this much money, the median person, but they have to spend this much money on, just hear me out, that's the growth in prices. Now that person on average has to spend that much money, and where do you think that money is coming from? If it's not coming from wages, it's coming from an increase in debt and an increase in borrowing, which taken to its full extreme, if we don't actually increase real growth for people in terms of wages and the amount of money they make, and this doesn't catch up, then those people can never actually pay back those debts. And that's where it becomes fragile, where we need there to be real economic growth amongst the people to pay back debts and actually earn more income.
Isn't New York and Boston like a bad example?
It is, and I'm
No,
not
Like what?
No, it's
like where's the median household?
I don't know why you guys are so
Nebraska?
against this idea.
I'm not-
of
no,
just,
we're not.
it's,
I'm not
laying it
against
out.
it at
Like,
all. But like you're saying,
how do you? Median
why
male
can't
income
you move?
hasn't
Why can't you,
changed.
Shane? Why can't you move to New York right now? Because it's like too expensive. You know what I mean? Like New York is overpriced. You know what I mean? Whatever.
Of course, everything has gotten more expensive. That's the whole point. Do you not hear what I'm saying? Everything has gotten more expensive while wages haven't gone up.
Okay.
I don't know. The cost of living in Raleigh is pretty equal right now.
No, but Shane, I agree with your argument. I do. I understand what you're saying, and it's bringing into the point, like it's opening the argument of wealth inequality in the world, and that we are at a peak of that. And I totally agree. Like, I couldn't agree more. I mean, I fucking voted for Bernie Sanders. Like, that should say enough about where I think wealth inequality exists. However, whatever the fuck you just argued for the past 15 fucking minutes has nothing to do with
Yes, it does. No, I'm saying that it's relevant in the fact that we're talking about literally
we're talking about cut out anyways. So keep going.
Like, no, I don't get how this isn't relevant. You're saying that you need economic growth in order for things to keep moving. Everybody believes that if we lend out our money, then we're going to get that money back and then some in the future.
Okay.
Think about it. You just said that credit is foundational. Now hear me out. If the American government keeps taking on loans of trillions and trillions of dollars and then never pays that money back, what does that do to the foundation of the actual credit system? Because you see, the American
Hold on.
government
Time out,
is
time
going
out, time out,
deeper
time out.
into debt.
Stop.
I think that that's
Just
the point that
for
you're
one
not getting.
second, Shane. 1 second. If you're looking at actual debt numbers, look at GDP to debt ratios. The U.S. isn't nearly as high as other countries.
It doesn't. Yeah, other countries are worse off. We're not in a good position.
No, I'm not
Like,
saying
it's not like
we
we're
are.
in a good position.
I'm not. We're not as leveraged as other countries. But what you're saying totally makes sense. I don't disagree. I don't. I just feel like you really, first of all, what the fuck happened in 1971.com? I wouldn't say this is a peer-reviewed source. So,
Well, no, look at all the charts. Can you look at where they're coming from? Can you,
I'll
source
fucking take a chart
Bloomberg,
on Excel and show
Thomson
it to you.
Reuters, ICE Benchmark Administration. You can like, this isn't some conspiracy theory.
Fred!
These are real charts.
All right,
Like,
no, you're not wrong.
what?
I
Look,
get that.
look. Can you just
I'm looking.
Can you just hear me out for 1 second? Not even about these charts. Just think about it. Yeah, I'm getting yelled at now because I'm yelling. All right, hear me out. Hear me out for 1 second. If the U.S. continues to take on this massive amount of debt, and one of the primary reasons why we're taking on a large amount of debt, or one of the contributing factors, is because we're pumping money back into the country in order to employ people and give people opportunities, like we've been since 2008 on economic stimulus, and we're pumping more money in. If we don't actually ever get to a point where we don't need to keep putting money in and we just keep taking on more and more debt, and then now the pie, we think this idea, the only reason why people give out money in loans is because they're going to get paid back. If we get to a point where we keep on taking out these loans and we don't have any, I'm talking about growth where the U.S. can spend less money and actually be in a deficit to start paying back those loans. That means that we saw it with Spain. It's the same idea where the Spanish king wasn't paying back his loans, so people stopped giving him money. It's like the same idea that if we don't actually get this, and when I say real economic growth, as in like if the people don't get to a point where they're actually making enough money and the government can actually, like, just even say the government can stop going into debt and actually have a deficit instead of a spending surplus, then what's going to happen to this bubble that we're talking about? Like, that's the whole idea of the trust. Where is the trust going to go if this never actually gets resolved? And this is what I'm talking. Like, I just brought up this example of like, we've been like, he brings up the fact that we've been pumping money into the market hoping that this bubble doesn't burst. And he even says that we're hoping that we recover economic growth. Like, he says it in the book. Like, that's the point that I'm trying to make.
Yeah, but he also wrote this in 2014. First of all, I don't know why I'm fucking correcting you here because it's just driving me insane, but we are in a deficit. A deficit adds to the national debt. If we were in a surplus, if we were in a surplus, that cuts from the debt. Anyway, dude, I don't disagree with the fact that on an individual basis, we do not see the growth that the countries and the world's GDP grows at. It's true. And that is a part of the whole argument of the fucked up world we live in today, that the rich keep getting richer, but it also has to do with what money gets you. The second you talk about $1 billion, you have $1 billion to invest. There's no one that can come close to you if I have 100 grand, my earning potential is so insignificant compared to that. And it's a part of this bigger picture, and I get that, Shane, and you're not wrong. I was trying to keep to the book. I agree with all your points. I don't necessarily trust this website. I would like to switch topics.
I don't know.
A few other things, but
I'm just like interested in the fact that you are for some reason against this idea as like you're just like anything like
I'm not
to the point of believing that this website, all of these graphs are lies.
No, I'm
like,
not saying they're not. I'm not saying they're not true. I'm just saying.
I'm so perplexed as to why you're so opposed to this idea.
Stuck on the fact that growth isn't happening when it is. There still is economic growth.
I think that what you're not getting is that it's not profitable economic growth. Like, we're going further and further into debt.
So we're like a venture capital funded business, basically, is what you're saying.
No, not even.
We're praying
Yeah,
that the
like
bill
we have.
doesn't come due.
No, but
Yeah,
Shane,
exactly.
but
Like
Shane,
somebody gave us a bunch of
no,
money and we're spending it to hopefully grow business.
I
And if it
think,
doesn't, then
Can
shit hits the fan.
can
but
you just
what
read
you're
from
saying?
the book?
How the hell did you pull that? Oh,
Oh, because he reads on his fucking phone. Can you read?
that just came from off my screen.
Over the last few years, banks and
not on my
governments have
screen.
been frenziedly printing money. Everybody is terrified that the current economic crisis may stop the growth of the economy. What I'm saying is that the growth of the economy has been inflated to believe that it's not really the growth of the economy in the American people. But what he's saying is that they're creating trillions of dollars, euros, and yen out of thin air, pumping cheap credit into the system and hoping that the scientists, technicians, and engineers will manage to come up with something really big before the bubble bursts. Everything depends on the people in the labs, blah, 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 blah.
Okay, but dude,
Yeah, that's
I get that.
the whole
Why?
belief in, like,
Why do you have
the
to
trust
tie
in the
that?
future.
Why it is tying that to like median income? Why is that the answer? That's what I don't understand.
No, we were talking about the fact I made the point that by pumping this up and making this bigger problem, the goal is hoping that we get to a point of what I'm saying is real economic growth.
Okay,
is what I'm saying.
okay.
The point I'm making.
I know. I don't. Okay, if we're talking about like Jerome Powell and Donald Trump and talking about quantitative easing and actually pumping money into the market that makes no fucking sense just so we don't go into recession, yes, I agree. Because we are in an economic fucking crisis right now without admitting it. But I just feel like taking what he's saying and bringing it to this context isn't exactly even. And putting it in terms of median income in the US, it's not the same argument.
No, what I'm all right, no, I'm just trying to make the point to you.
My point, please.
It's just
still producing. There still is a growth in GDP. There is.
And who's it going to?
What do you mean, who is it going to?
Who is it going to? It's not going to the American people, as you see in median household income. So who's the money going to in the growth in GDP?
Wait, go back to the chart. Go back to the median income chart.
I don't.
This is female, so that's.
I don't have an answer. I just feel like this is not the art. This isn't.
No, but what I'm saying
here. I don't have the answer.
Yes.
You're
there is something wrong here. No, I agree with you. There's something wrong here. This doesn't make sense.
Okay, so.
And go back to female. Scroll down.
That's because females started entering the workforce.
And go back up to males. So that chart
this is percentage
says
based.
More females make higher than males, or am I reading this wrong?
You're reading it wrong.
This is just talking about growth.
Women,
growth.
There was also a wage gap, so.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm just making the point that I think it's interesting that we talked about this whole idea of debt and the fact that it's based on truth and the idea that we need to get to a point where there will be a point, like Joey brought up the point that everybody believes in the economic system and thinks that growth will always continue. And I think that idea, judging based on where we're heading in terms of the increase in price of goods and things of that nature, and the non-growth in terms of wages of the median male, I think causes a major tension that has the potential to cause people to start losing trust in this economic system. That's the general gist of the point. The reason why I brought this up, I think it got bigger because you started saying
first time you used the word trust. Just saying. I feel like that is a total fair point. You did not bring the word trust into this before.
Okay.
You're not wrong.
That's fair. I think that this is just an interesting. I've came across this website and these arguments about what's happened since the 1970s, and I think it's a very interesting thing that we should think about.
Yes.
Not in this conversation, but it's an interesting thing to just maybe even just reading about this. I don't know. Maybe it's another topic for books, but it's just an interesting to look at the actual data.
Yeah.